welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Today we consider the situation of the church in Egypt, a country struggling to find its feet following a series of political upheavals in which, following the popular overthrow of the Mubarak regime, post-revolutionary politics became polarized between the ascendant Muslim Brotherhood on the one hand and the liberal and secular forces on the other. The result was the ousting of the Morsi government by the military 1 year later, to the welcome of the majority of Egyptian society, though Islamic extremists vented their anger on those perceived in the overthrow, including moderate Muslims and Christians. To tell us more about the situation today in Egypt, it is my privilege to welcome His Excellency Kyrillos William, the Bishop of Assiut in Egypt. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you to invite me to be with you on this program and to be in the aid to the Church in Need, who have many interests for our sick.
Your Excellency, Egypt is approximately 80%, 85% Muslim, Sunni,
Yes.
and Christians make up 10 to 15% of the population, of which the majority are Coptic Orthodox.
Yes.
And the Catholics make up even smaller minority. I think you're something like 200,000 in the country.
Yes, about.
How would you say are the relations between the Coptic Orthodox and the Coptic Catholic Church in Egypt?
The relation is very good. We started 2 years ago a council of all the Christian churches in Egypt to make some activity together for priests, for young people, etc. But also to have a common voice toward the civil life of Egypt, to deal together about the constitution, about the elections, about the life of our country.
I suppose this unity has been forged even more closely through the fire, the political fire through which the country has been living most recently. Would you also agree that the unity has become stronger?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. We feel the need the last year, the last 2 years, yes.
And also the Coptic Orthodox Patriarch, I believe Tarados is very welcoming and very open to Pope Francis and vice versa. Pope Francis is also
very open, and after his visit to Pope Francis, he came back with enthusiasm to make something for to bring together closer the Catholic, and also for the rebaptism. He promised to study this question.
This is an important question,
yes,
because up to now, if I understand correctly, the Coptic Orthodox do not recognize the baptism of the Catholic,
other churches, for
all other churches. So he has promised to restudy this question.
Yes.
Your Excellency, now Egypt has been through a political upheaval. You've been through the question of the Mubarak regime, then the Muslim Brotherhood and the Morsi government, and now again recently overthrown by the military. How would you describe?
Not exactly by the military, by the will of the people. Yes, and the military had to protect the will of the people. Yes.
Excellent. Well, we're going to come to this question.
Yes.
I would like you, perhaps before we get there, can you describe how is the political landscape now?
We started on the 25th of January 2011. This movement of young people seeking for more democracy, more liberty. They cried, bread, liberty, democracy, equality. And we found it together, young from all directions, from all the ideologies. And we had the overthrow of Mubarak regime. Then we found the Muslim Brotherhood on the head of the country, on the authority. how it has happened. We say that the revolution was kidnapped.
It was hijacked, if you will, by
yes.
But they were, I suppose, because the Muslim Brotherhood had been for so many years under the Mubarak government, had been the most organized political force in the country.
Yes, exactly. Then they win the elections, but how they win the elections? Somebody were convinced for the Muslim ideology, but many others was polarized by the religion. They said, do you choose God or the man? Do you choose the faith or the apostasy?
Yes.
And many people were polarized with this. Also, a group of people were polarized by helps, material helps, money and
because
there are many poor.
In researching this question, I understood that, for example, in many mosques, the Muslims were told, as you mentioned now, they have almost a religious obligation to vote in the Muslim Brotherhood and the Morsi government.
Yes.
And as you say, a lot of people were also, the poor people were also paid to vote for the Morsi government. And when the final election did come about, if I'm not mistaken, the numbers that actually came to vote were very low.
Yes.
Was it something like 13 million? Or I'm not sure, you must
I
confirm or
don't
not.
know, yeah.
But in any case, the numbers were very low.
Very low from one hand. From the other hand, many Christians were forbidden to go to make the election. In many villages who are all are Christian, the Muslim Brotherhood prohibited them to go to the polls. Yes.
So can one say, and I suppose this was the argument, that the will of the people in the end was not respected because the foundation of the process was flawed?
Yes.
So we've come through the election. Now, having said that, the government of Morsi was democratically elected.
Yes.
The process was flawed.
Yes.
But the election was, if you say, fair and free, but was a democratic process.
Yes.
And then
we accepted Morsi as president of all Egyptians. He said it.
And then what happened? Why did it?
Yes. And he, at the beginning, he received a representative of all the churches and promised them, you will be free, you will have all your rights. But he promised also many things to do it for Egypt within 100 days. But nothing is done. They haven't experienced. They took all the Muslim Brotherhood on head of governorates and ministers and everywhere. But without experience, without...
so they could not govern.
Yeah, he couldn't.
Another question I have read, and we spoke earlier about the fact that Morsi was not the last word in the question of the governments. There was an authority higher than President Morsi.
Because he belongs to the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood. And who belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood have to obey to the highest spiritual authority, al-Murshid. And he had a conflict to obey to the spiritual authority or to obey to the will of the people of Egypt, what Egypt needs.
So Morsi, in fact, was caught between these two forces and rendered ineffective.
Yes.
A big fear was the constitution. A new constitution was suddenly presented, and there was a great discussion because it seemed that not even were the elections complete before the discussions of the constitution were started. And the churches were very afraid of this new constitution. Why were they so afraid of this constitution?
The commission, the 100 people who wrote the constitution, was in big majority Islamists.
In fact, the churches walked out.
Walked out when they tried to present an ideology for all Egyptian people, but it was rejected. In each article of the Constitution, it is written, though, at the end, So when it is not against the Sharia, so it means
So the
nothing.
Sharia law became the foundation
Yes,
for the whole
yes,
constitution.
Yes. That to mix politics and religion and to prepare a caliphate in Egypt, it was as a goal of the target of the Muslim Brotherhood.
This was the fear, was that it would become a caliphate, an Islamic caliphate.
Yes. And also when we had the referendum for the constitution, many people said no, but...
you had no voice.
Yes.
Overthrow of the Morsi government. And after the overthrow, there was a terrible violence enacted against the general population that would be not only Christians, but moderate Muslims who stood against the Muslim Brotherhood, stood against the Morsi regime. But Christians seemed to be particularly attacked. Over 80 churches were burned, and there was violence against the Christian population. Why? Why were Christians so targeted following the overthrow of the Muslim Brotherhood, or rather the Morsi government?
Because Islamists, Muslim Brotherhood and other groups of Islamists think that all the Christian against Morsi regime, against the Islam, and therefore they come to make violence against churches and Christians in many cities and villages, especially in our area, Minya and Assiut, where the Christians are very strong. We have about 30% Minya in our area, 30% are Christian. Then also because in our area, I saw it is this question that you want to ask, why Minya and Assiut especially? The fundamentalists, the extremists are very strong there. They have
a strong population.
Yes.
And what was your reaction when you heard that suddenly the churches were on fire? Over 80 churches, I think, have been burned, and schools were destroyed. And what was your reaction when you first heard of this?
We were surprised really of this big number of burned churches and Christian institutions. But we saw that not only churches, there are many police stations, many courts, tribunals,
so it wasn't
and public buildings were burned. They want to burn Egypt. Without us, nothing can go. Without Morsi, you have to Morsi have to come back to show that to the European or the world that Egypt is cannot go without us, and to intervene of the West in Egypt. Yeah.
What was the response of particularly the moderate Muslims? Because there are many beautiful stories, in fact, of the reaction of the moderate Muslims to this violence against their Christian brothers.
Really, they come alone from free to protect the churches. And many village priests told me that they came, and we saw how they protected churches and Christian institutions against the terrorists. Also, they saw that we are close together. Pope Tawadros said, if they burn the churches, we go to pray in the mosques. If they burn the mosques, we pray together in the churches. When they burn mosques and churches, we pray on the street together with our brother, the Muslim. And the reaction of the Christian really was very nice, very nice. Nobody cried, nobody asked the intervene of the West to protect us. We prayed for our for these people, for peace. Yeah, when one church in my diocese was burned, and we celebrated the Assumption all together, all the parishes of the city of Assiut together in this church. And I told the people, we are not here to cry or to weep. We are here to say that our faith, our hope, still strong. Our love to all our brothers is stronger than before. We pray for those who burned the church. May God help them to come back, because Egypt is big enough for all Egyptians. We want to live in peace as brothers, all together, Muslim and Christian.
In fact, You mentioned earlier that there was a church behind your church, a Coptic Orthodox church, that had a big banner, this church had been burned.
Yes.
And a big banner hanging saying, "We forgive." So in this case, Egypt is special. We have, for example, seen the violence tearing apart in Iraq, tearing apart the fabric of society in Iraq. Now in Syria, the violence is tearing apart the fabric of society in Syria. But in Egypt, the fabric is still holding together.
This church you mentioned is St. George Church. It's close to our burned church. I saw they wrote, we forgive many times there. And never the Egyptian were close together, Muslim and Christian, population with army, police and institution like at this moment, because we are feeling all that we have a common challenge is the terrorism, and we are fighting against terrorism, but not against terrorists. All Egyptians have place in Egypt, but just those who make terror have to get to the court, and we want to live together. Still, we lived 15 centuries together, Muslim and Christian, without problems. From time to time it is some fanatic, but the Egyptian people are peaceful people, are seeking for reconciliation and collaboration. And the church have a big role in this among her activities, social activities, engagement, schools, Catholic schools.
Exactly, and many of the Catholic schools, of course, 90% of the population of these schools are Muslim students. So historically, through the years, these Muslim students and Christian students have been sitting side to side.
Yes. And one school who was burned by Bishop Boutros in Minya, people who studied there, so we will reconstruct the school because we studied here. That's our school. We cannot see this. Yeah.
In fact, Bishop Boutros Hana, the Bishop of Minya, said that he'd never seen the churches so full, even in the burnt churches, so full as after these attacks. So has this given a new life to the faith of the people in Egypt among the Christians?
Is it true? Some Christians were afraid to come to the church because the Muslim Brotherhood says that we burned the church, and in the next week we killed all Christian priests, bishops, and Christian. But the churches were so full. I saw everywhere. The more faithful than before. Yeah.
The highest Islamic authority now is working together with you for the question of a new constitution. Can you tell us a little bit now about the new steps of reforming the society, particularly the constitution, after all of these events? And what is the hope for the future?
All are seeking for a constitution for all Egyptians, for the separation of religion and state, are seeking for the identity of Egypt. Egypt was always a peaceful country, open for all, and no distinction between people.
So a country based on citizenship.
Not
on religion. But on citizenship. The other question is obviously moving away from the Sharia. Is it possible to move the question of the Sharia law out of the Constitution?
Yes, we had two articles clear about Sharia, Article 2 and Article 219. Article 2 was always on the Constitution since 1971, the time of Sadat. He introduced it for another ground, to introduce other thing about his authority, and it was accepted. Article 2 says that the Sharia is main source of the legislation.
The inspiration.
Exactly, the inspiration. It is no problem for us.
That's acceptable for the churches.
But the other article, 219, who explained the Article 2, very dangerous for all non-Muslim, the non-Muslims, not only Christian but all the others, because they will consider it as foreigners, as not citizen of Egypt, and will have a particular deal with them too.
So all non-Muslims would then be considered second-class citizens, if you will, in your own country.
Yes. And now all decided to eliminate this article 219 will be not, and are speaking about Article 2 to reformulate it to defend the citizenship, all Egyptians.
So Egypt could become, like Lebanon, another message for the Middle East of brotherly living together in this environment, which is so difficult at the moment.
Yes, and the message of the document post-synod of the Middle East says clearly that a Middle East without Christian or with few Christian are not the Middle East. The Middle East was always open for all together. They built it together, their civilization, Christian at the beginning, then Muslim later in the 17th century, and collaborate together, and they should remain together, yes.
What about reconciliation with the Muslim Brotherhood? Is it possible, and what steps are being taken here?
Reconciliation with all Egyptian is possible because they are Egyptian. With all citizens, somebody wrote, we don't need a reconciliation because they are Egyptian. They are, but with those who were violent against the others, against institutions, they have to go to represent to the court.
To answer for these questions.
Yes.
I understand also that the Al-Azhar University has worked also very quickly in the mosques, removing the radical element out of the mosques. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
Yes, just the last week, a decision from Azhar, the biggest institution of the Islam, Sunni Islam, decided that the small mosques who are not belonging to the Ministry of Waqf, the Ministry of Religion, should be closed on Fridays.
How many are we talking about?
13,000.
13,000 mosques?
Small, not exactly mosques, but you find a big building, a big house, and there is a small chapel,
Okay.
It will be closed. Only the official mosques who are belonging to the ministry, and they have the preach written. They have to preach reconciliation, brotherhood, values, human values, and not to insult everyone, because in many for these mosques were insulting Christian and Jews and
many of these imam or these Muslim preachers were in fact not educated.
Yes. When they said it, Sheikh Karima, a big authority in Azhar, said last week that look at the Christian and the Jews. Nobody can preach when he is not priest, he was had not studied. But in Islam, everybody can preach. Everybody, it is not. They don't need to study in order to preach. They preach, and they bring very extremist ideas and ideology and their preaching, and the people hear the homily of Friday and go directly to act. 3 weeks ago, I was in Assiut. I heard the homily, and I waited after this that the Muslim come and burn. And really, it was
so aggressive.
But it was the last time for this preacher. They took him immediately. Yeah. A big effort is done now from Azhar and the official Islam institution on the matter
on this question. Your Excellency, we know that Egypt will still have many obstacles to overcome, but you are hopeful.
I am very, very hopeful, first of all, because we believe on the providence, and we say, not only we Christian, but many Muslims, what happened in Egypt the 2 last months are a miracle, a really miracle, a fruit of prayers and fast. not only from Egyptian, but from many our brothers and sisters in the world praying for us. And therefore we are hopeful, first. Second is the will of the people. Now a new factor in Egypt, the will of the Egyptian people. When the people want something, nobody can do against it. And really, they said, when the president will not do our will, we come to Tahrir Square, and
we will protest.
Nobody waited that more than 30 million of Egyptians went out, and nobody thought that this movement of Tamarrud, rebellion, can gather this so many voices. They wanted just 15 million voices, more than what Morsi had, but they want 22,000 million of signatures.
22 million signatures.
Then after that, not only signature, the people are coming.
30 million on the streets.
Yeah.
Your Excellency, thank you for having been with us today in our program and giving us this hopeful vision and this hopeful sign for Egypt.
We are thanking you also for your interest, big interest, and your prayers and the prayers of all our brothers and sisters in all countries in the world. Yeah.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program. And if you'd like to know more about the situation in Egypt, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.